Go.
Says we're live. Give it a sec.
All right. All right. Let's see.
We're on.
Are we on?
We're on. I see an ad.
All right. So, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, everybody out there. And contrary to popular belief, I was not fixing my hair or putting on makeup. I am naturally perfect. Sorry, guys. But so we got a couple of things we're going to be talking about tonight. And first off, let's see what these other two great people are doing. So, how's it going, fellas? What have you been up to?
Who are you talking to, great people?
The people on the panel, not you, the side chat. What's been going on?
Hands are full, all sorts of stuff going on, and just trying to figure out what the next video is going to be, because there's a lot of stuff on the plate, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of content, and people are providing more suggestions and things they want to see, some of which are realistic and some of which are not realistic. But yeah, just lots of stuff going on, man. It's getting cold out. Worked in the yard right before this and did some leaf raking, so that's always fun.
Yeah, about the same here. Just, got a lot of videos that I need to get done, and, traveling and working and just doing life. Y'all know how that is.
Yeah, same thing. Like 76, or like KS said, up here in New York, it has been getting really cold already, really fast. It went from hot and humid to now, like tonight's supposed to be 30 degrees, which is absolute garbage. And we've had nothing but rain for, it feels like almost a month. It's just been raining and raining and raining. So, it's just been nasty and it sucks, but it is what it is. We get another winter, and then eventually it'll be spring, then summer, and we'll all be happy again. But I'm glad to hear everybody's doing well. Hopefully everybody out there who's watching the video or the live stream right now is doing very well. So we do have a couple of topics that we did bring up. However, we're going to try to focus a little bit more on everybody on the side panel tonight, trying to gear your questions. And before we even start the video, we already got a first question. And I'm going to scroll back up and see if I can find it. Hopefully I can.
So, I've got it if you need it.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us what that question was.
All right, this is from Cajun Tigers. It's all about grip pressure. What does everybody do? Is it the death grip, where you squeeze the crap out of it, the push-pull method, or just enough pressure to control the gun?
It's an interesting question. So, Big Johnson, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, y'all probably all heard it, hold the gun like you're holding a baby bird, all that old stuff. What I do is right hand, I grip it very firm, and you'll usually see the muscles right here pop out, and press. I would probably, in the 60-40 method, that's hard to judge in your head. I would say grip the gun as hard as you can to control recoil and, of course, muzzle flip, push, anything like that. And then, you don't want your hands turning blue, but I would say grip it as tight as you can to control the pistol and keep it on target. And then if you need to let off a little bit, the whole thing is, when I grab a pistol now, I don't even concentrate on grip. It's just there. But I can tell it if I weaken it up, then I'll get a little push to the left. And then what happens is I get weak with my left hand. So then I'll just apply a little more, and then it just straightens right back up. So, that's kind of, and then of course, like before you hear the buzzer, I will tell myself, grip pressure, because that can be a boogaboo for my left hand.
What do you think, KS? What are your thoughts?
It's been a topic for me here for a little bit. In fact, had a brief conversation through comments with Dirt Road, because he was talking about an article in Pew Pew Tactical, specifically about grip. So I went out and reread it because it's been a while. I have read that one. Some pretty cool articles about some of the techniques out there. And grip's been a focus for me for a while, because I think I've gotten pretty sloppy about some things, and I've got a natural shake, and so it's getting a little bit worse. And I've noticed that when I put a lot of pressure on the firearm with my support hand, my left hand in this case, so much pressure that I mean I can physically see I'm starting to shake, and so that's when I know I've put too much pressure on it, and so that's when I need to let off just a little bit. So for me, it's kind of 50-50 with both hands, because I actually I'm squeezing with my three fingers as long as I have the 3-finger option. with a pretty full grip on here. But then the rest of my hand is pretty relaxed. My trigger finger is relaxed, so it can just do its thing. My thumb is not doing anything, and then the rest of it I rely on my left hand. And so, and I've been kind of playing around with this at the range a little bit, doing some slow fire. In fact, the Apex video I've got coming out kind of shows me going through that process, sloppy or not. That's what it is. But I'm really trying to find the best combination for me, because my strength is changing as I'm getting older, and so I have to consider a little bit differently how I'm approaching the firearm, how it's going to be comfortable, and I can shoot for a long period of time, but have the best control that I can anyway. So it's always it's a learning process. It's always a learning process. There are things you can do to tweak things, and I don't think you should be afraid to try some new techniques and see if there's something that might work a little bit better for you, because there are different people have different approaches to this. Some people are riding things super hard and real high and just gripping the snot out of a gun, whereas some people are a little bit more loosey-goosey, and a lot of different things. So it's a work in progress, man. It's such a good topic.
Yeah, even with the grip, I would say it's, you read, you watch, you learn, you try to listen to other people who have years of experience. Some people they talk about that old method of pushing forward and pushing back with the opposite hands. I don't really know if that's worthy of using. I would agree that I definitely push down harder on the 3 fingers I have on the grip. And then when I bring my support hand in, what I tend to do is I just try to almost like, how can I say this without everybody coming up with a wise comment? I'm trying to figure it out. But basically, as I go in, I just remind myself to kind of almost squeeze the grip of the handgun, not crush it, but actually just squeeze it, with the palm of my hand. And I've tried the loosey-goosey thing. It doesn't really work. The gun flips a little bit too much. I've seen a lot of comments on the side chat that were quite interesting, by the way. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be based on what you feel most comfortable with. And you don't have to talk to me about shaky hands. I am the king of shaky hands. So, I totally get it. But I just feel like, a firm but not destructive grip, I think, is always worthy of shooting a handgun. So.
Yeah, and also it's not, a lot of people might have a death grip on it, but they have everything else is weak. So they got the death grip, but they're just letting their elbows fly.
Right.
So if you put it in and then vice your forearms out,
Sure.
kind of like you're pressing into a vice like this, it actually really helps stabilize everything, and it'll just be like boop, 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 rapid shots.
Right.
So
right.
a lot of people, I've seen people squeeze the crap out of a gun, but they're over there just flopping all over the place. So and it's going to be affected as we get older. I have arthritis. I know, people have tremors, things like that. And I mean, you have to adapt to what's going to work for you. If you just read a book and it says do this, that might not work for you.
Right.
And I have some guns where I'm literally wrapping my hands, it seems like twice around a gun, and other people don't have that problem. So you just have to make stuff work for you.
Right. Which, and again, it's to each their own. Whatever works for you, just keep doing it. I mean, there are always people who will say, well, this is the perfect grip or that's the perfect grip. But if you're efficient or proficient and you feel pretty confident, I guess it's working. So just stick with what works for you, I guess.
So,
all right. So go ahead.
Sorry, before we run on, Scab did bring up a good point, and this is a follow-up to grip. And he was talking about, some people have the technique of using their support hand finger on the trigger guard. Something I've never done. To me, it doesn't feel comfortable at all. I don't care for it, and it pulls my left hand too far up on the gun, I think. I prefer to have it back just a little bit. But there are a lot of people that do that. Who else does that, or do you think there are some advantages to doing that in controlling the muzzle flip a little bit, perhaps?
I mean, I think ultimately it's based on the shooter. I think guns that have the texturing on the trigger guard, put it there for a reason, because there's probably been people who are shooting like that for years, and that's what they're used to. I mean, I don't like it. I think it's uncomfortable. I can't get used to that.
What's funny, and I know that we've probably all done this. I've watched a lot, of or basically U.S. videos of people shooting, and then I've watched a lot of European videos of people shooting, and that seems to be a big thing, like European police and things like that. I don't know if they train that way. I don't know, but I've seen a lot of people using that front trigger guard method. And I just say, if it works for you, I mean, I've seen guys that do it that way. Hell, I used to shoot with an old man that did the teacup. If y'all have ever seen the teacup picture, I mean, it's crazy. But this old guy, he'd take his 45, and I mean, it was just holes inside of holes. You know, I'm looking at it going, that's the damn teacup method. But like I said, what works for someone else, you know, might not work for you, etc.
Exactly. So just really quick, I also want to just bring up something because I know KS brought up an Apex thing. So if you guys are not aware, Apex is now, or I guess they've now issued this thing that if you have an FNN 509 and you're a little bit hesitant to take it apart and put your own trigger in there, because there have been some instances where I guess people have broken the pin that gets the locking block out. They're actually saying that you can send it to them and they will do it for you. Again, you can check their website out. It's there. And I think that's a good deal for those of you who maybe don't feel very confident in doing it. I plan on doing mine. So everyone pray for me that I don't break it because that's going to suck. But what the hell? Might as well try it and see what happens.
Yeah, you have to pay the shipping there and I think the shipping back or something. But I mean, that's a hell of a deal. You know, they're going to do the labor for free. And I think, you know, it's definitely worth it if you don't feel comfortable about doing it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that front pin, that most forward pin on the frame, is nasty. That's that will be probably 85%, almost 90% of your time just dealing with getting that pin out and back in. So kind of an FYI.
Yeah, and you know, I saw their video on their website. It's very detailed. I think that's probably the best video they've ever made, even better than their M&P series, because I had to actually look at Nolan's video to really figure out how to install my own trigger. But the 509 looks like it's going to be a bit of a bear, so I may get, you know, a little pin punch and see if I can just budget. And if not, I probably will have to send it out or have somebody much more experienced than I do it. But that's just for everybody out there who's got the 509. That's for all you guys. All right. So there have been some questions out there, fellas. Do we have anything that anyone would like to discuss in regards to any of the questions?
Let's see here.
Sometimes it's hard to keep up because we talk about one topic and then there's a million people. Well, I wish a million people, but not.
Well, you do actually have a question. Steve's asking you, have you heard anything about the Caracol?
No, although JB Razor is trying to promote me in getting one for free, which is really awesome. He bothers them every single time they post something on Instagram, and I love it. I think it's hilarious. But so far, I have not heard anything from them, and it's almost like the Caracol pistol has disappeared. I have not seen anything on them for a couple of weeks now. It's been a lot of their rifles, but that's it. So I don't know what's going on. Hopefully it'll be released. I mean, they were saying this year, so I'm hoping it will be. But getting back to a question that Music Lover asked, and I think all three of us can chime in on this to an extent. Music Lover was asking that she was thinking about buying a Glock 17 Gen 4 MOS to put on her Glock 34 for a red dot. What are you guys thinking about something like that?
Well, you could do it. I mean, you know, there's people that switch those frames back and switch the slides back and forth as long as they're the same gen. You know, I know that I tried to put the 34 Gen 5 slide on the Glock 19X, and I got it on there, but it wouldn't shoot, and I couldn't pull it off. So that was a 19. So I, as I understand it, will fit on the 17.
So let me ask a question here. So looking to put a Glock 17 Gen 4 upper MOS on my Glock 34 Gen 4. So you've got the gens right. So that's good. You're not going to have any compatibility issues. But I would wonder why, because the frames are the same, the rounds are the same, unless there's something different about your Gen 4 34 frame in terms of the internals that you like, and it's just really dialed in or something like that. I don't know that I would see a reason to do that, because you have two separate guns that have the same frame, just different slide lengths, right? And different sight radius, and then one has the MOS. But I would say that to me, there wouldn't be a reason to flip-flop the two, but that's just me.
Well, some of the Gen 4s did not have an MOS, the 34s. So,
well, you're right, and that's true. But the Glock 17 Gen 4 is a Glock 34 Gen 4, just with the MOS and a slightly shorter slide. So, I mean, that to me, I don't know why you would need to flip-flop the two, but I mean, if there's some particular reason why you would want to do that, perhaps that's true. Yeah, and Fit is saying it's missing the optic cut. And I get that, and so the 17's but the frames are the same. That's where I'm getting a little bit.
Grip. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Advantage between the two.
Yeah.
I would just say go buy a Gen 5 MOS.
Yeah.
Just do that. That's what KS did. That's what I did actually. I'm just waiting for it to get out of jail, and that's what I would recommend if that helps at all.
I will tell you, the Gen 5 MOS has been absolutely phenomenal. It has been, you know what, I think, and I like the 45, but the 19 MOS, that is by far my favorite.
That was the big question I had and I kept bothering, I think, everybody who's making videos on those handguns, because I couldn't decide. You know, I had a 19 Gen 5 already, and I have the 19X, and I just absolutely love the grip on the 19X. I love it. It's just perfect for me. Much better than the 19, although the 19 is good for me as well. And ultimately, I decided to just sell off my Gen 5 to get a new Gen 5 MOS, because if I ever wanted to just switch the slides onto the 19X, then I have it, you know, and that's sort of why I went that route. So I'm excited, just waiting for it to, you know, just trying to get it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. By any chance, and I don't know if any of the people in the comment section saw this, but did y'all get a chance to look at the Canik TP9 SF Elite Combat?
I did not. No.
It is a complete ripoff, basically, of the FN 509 Tactical. I mean, it's exactly the same gun. Of course, it's less expensive, and I didn't see 24 rounders. However, it really looks a lot like it. You know, and it's got some base plates. I didn't see how many it holds, but I would assume it's probably like a 19 plus 3 or 4 or something. But yeah, I mean, they tried to copy that thing to a T, you know, but I didn't know if y'all had a chance to see it, or if anybody had even, you know, was curious about it or anything like that. And I don't know if it's going to be a bad gun. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Can you put that up there? Yeah, there it is. So, I mean, it's pretty much a 509 somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks kind of cool. You know, there are a couple things about the Caniks that I did enjoy. The ergonomics were good enough; they weren't the best, but their triggers were phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed their triggers because they're very similar to like a PPQ, that sort of thing. I mean, they're light, they're crisp, they've got a great reset, and then the cost. You know, I have to give Canik a little bit of credit. Aside from the Elite and some of the early issues, of course, 17 had a lot of experience with that, and so did others. But Canik, a lot of people, especially some of the other versions of it, have had great success, and they've really raved about it. So, you know, that might be one to kind of play around with and see what it's like.
Yeah,
sure. All right, so I do want to bring up something really quick, and this is going to really, I think Bald and Curious is going to absolutely appreciate this more than anybody else. So you guys tell me if it comes up. Hopefully it does. I don't know if it will, but it's not looking like it wants to. Great, there it is. I know. Can you guys see that?
No.
No? All right, let me share that video. Let me share this with you really quick. Let's see. All right. You guys keep talking. I'll fix this at some point. Don't worry about it.
Okay, not worrying about it. We did have another question while you're doing that. This was from Pat8473. This is the new red dot from Hollow Sun. What do you guys think of that? I've seen a couple of videos on it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos on it, and I think it's actually probably going to be somewhat of a contender. You know, I do like that it has the solar panel on the top. I mean, I thought that's pretty cool. You're talking about the optic for the pistol, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's got the little solar panel on the top. I think that's pretty cool. You know, I did see Sage Dynamic did a test on it and kind of beat the crap out of it and dropped it, and seemed to be working pretty well. I personally don't have any experience with it, but I would be interested in it. Seems to be hitting a pretty nice price point. I can't remember what the MSRP was, but it looked very reasonable. So
yeah, I don't really know. I've never seen it. I don't really look at that kind of stuff, to be honest with you, because just they don't really do anything for me. So I'm not the guy to ask, that's for sure.
I think it looks kind of cool. I enjoy red dots. It's not something I've chosen to carry or anything like that, and partly because I just simply don't have enough time behind them. But I think they look kind of cool. I've heard good things, kind of like you said, Big Johnson. I know Justin Opinion did one as well, and he thought they were pretty cool for the most part. But I don't know. I have some experience with a few red dots, but I need to immerse myself a little bit more into that to have a better opinion if that one in particular is good.
Yeah, REB says he has the 507C on his G20, and it's great. So,
all right. Do you guys mind if I share this with you really quick? And again, I don't know if this is going to work for whatever reason. It's not coming up, so I'm going to have to do a full screen share on it. Hopefully, it doesn't look terrible. Let me do this. Can you guys see that now? I may have to. Yes. I may have to save it on my screen here. Oh my God, what is that? All right, so you see that? It's just one picture, right? Okay, good. So I just wanted to bring this up really quick, take a couple of minutes and discuss what your thoughts are on this thing. This is that foldable Glock 43, or is it a 43 or 19? I don't even know what it is. But I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on something like this for a concealed carry option. I don't really know if I'd want something like this, but what are your thoughts on that, fellas?
Well, I mean, I've played with it in the store and kind of, messed around with it. Honestly, it doesn't do anything for me. I mean, like we've said, or like I've said before, any gun on you is good that you at least have a gun. But I don't know if there's going to be like an issue with, getting it all seated and ready to go. I don't know. Or if you would slam the mag in there. Sure, you probably, I don't know if you'd have one in the chamber, if you're going to remember to rack it, I don't know. I think it's personally kind of gimmicky, but that's just me. That's just kind of my opinion.
What about you, KS? We know you're the Glock guy, so you tell us what you think about this thing.
Well, Frontier has had one, and I think they might even still have it. They've had it for quite a while. I like the idea of it. I mean, I think, anytime we see something that's outside the box, and different and kind of challenging the norm a little bit. I like that companies are doing that. So I have to give a little bit of props to that. That said, here's the big but. It feels awful in the hand. The trigger's terrible. The grip feels bad. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to, slander anything. Again, I think the concept is great. But to me, the second I put it in my hand, I knew it was a no way Jose sort of thing. I mean, the trigger guard, of course, is part of the whole mechanics of it. It's very strange. I mean, yeah, it's just it's a different deal. And you're right about the racking. That's not a thing for me. So I like the idea. I like the idea, but I think we have a long ways to go before that's a real viable option. And it's also expensive. It's expensive. I mean, Bald was saying, $900 to $1,000. That's about right.
My thing with that gun though is it any more efficient than just carrying a gun in a holster? Because if you've got to draw your gun and you have that thing, that means you got to pull that thing out of your pocket. You got to fold it back to make it look like a gun, and then you do have to rack the slide because it won't load one in the chamber. So I don't know if that's. I mean, is that any more efficient? That's what I don't understand. Maybe it would be good if you needed to store it somewhere, like in your car, and you want to hide it out of place, and nobody would ever, look in a certain place of the car. But I'm not exactly sure if that would be something that would be worth using as a concealed carry item. I don't know. It's just weird.
And also, like you were saying, you're going to have to put it in, some pants that you could get your hand in quickly, baggy cargo shorts or something, because it's going to look like you're carrying a freaking big ass brick in your front pocket. And then I could see people coming out with holsters that look like remember those old beeper boxes where you could pop them down and that little North American 22 would pop out of it. I could see somebody carrying a big brick on their side with that gun in it, something trying to make it look like a cell phone holder or something. I just think it's way too gimmicky. I mean, myself, I would rather carry a 380 in the front pocket or something to that effect, or even, a smaller 9 if you could get it in there, before I would consider something that I have to put together and hope the mag seats. I mean, because even if you fold it, the way you look, or when I was playing with it, I was folding it like this, and I still had to kind of push the mag in the bottom. It didn't just automatically lock in there. So, you could snap it together and think you're ready to go and rack it, and there's not going to be a round in the chamber, because the mag hasn't seated in there. So I don't know. I just think it's, I think it's kind of a paperweight. Personally, I wouldn't I wouldn't go with that.
Yeah, music is right. She's saying I would buy it if it was an FDE. You're absolutely right. It's got to be an FDE, and I'll buy it. No,
Yeah.
and I think Razor brought it up and said the fact that this looks more like a kind of a survival kit type of gun. So you would throw it in a box, and if you had to bail on a plane or a boat, if you didn't die in the crash or when it sunk, then you could definitely use it. And maybe that would be a good use for it. But
Yeah, but would
I
it
don't
be?
practical is
Would
not.
you
It's not.
justify buying that for $1,000, a fold-up gun that you could throw in a bag, or would you just buy a Glock 19 or I mean, for $450 or two
Yeah,
or three of them,
right.
for that price and just have them in multiple locations? I don't know. I think the $1,000 is crazy.
I'm just gonna wait for KS to review it, and then we'll know if it's worthy.
I'll get right on it.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about really quick with you fellas, unless we have any questions on the side, and we have plenty of time. We still got about almost a little over a half an hour. So plenty of time for people to throw their questions out there. But I do want to bring up something that actually excites me quite a bit in the night sight world. And I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts on it. And I know, we've talked about night sights a lot. There's always a question, do you do night sights? Do you do regular sights? Stock sights, fiber optic sights, but I was super excited. I am going to bring this picture up also. I'm sorry, guys. I have to show it because I am really excited about this. And no, they are not sponsoring the channel, nor are they sponsoring this chat. I mean, who would do that anyway? But let me just share this with everybody. Oh, my God. Oh, boy. That's just crazy. So let me just blow this up.
There it is.
Let me.
Well, you had it.
Is that better?
Yeah.
All right, I'll just okay. So these are the new XS Big Dots, and as you will notice, they are no longer white in the front. We actually now look to see like there's like one of those Luma greens or whatever, Luma yellows. I don't know what you want to call that, and then the orange. So for those of you who are familiar with their F8 sights, it's the same color orange as that set of sights. And I've always said since the day I first got my XS Big Dots, if they would have just made these in color in the front, these to me would be absolutely freaking amazing because they're super easy to target. Maybe not necessarily for precision accuracy, but for a self-defense gun, for a gun you need to draw and shoot fast. When they put those two colors out and I saw that, I was like, holy crap, I need to get a set of these sights very fast when they come out. So it looks like December. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is this something that you would consider? Have you shied away from big dots? If so, why?
Go ahead, KS.
I'm not a fan. And I've only shot a little bit. In fact, I think Big Johnson. I think I shot one of the guns. It might have been the Sphinx, maybe, or something that that had the big dot. So I pretty minimal experience. So I say no with a caveat. I would be willing to try again, but I don't. I find them to be great for up close and personal. If I, for a single stack or something that's not got maybe the reach out and touch you that some other guns might, or practically that you would use them for. Perhaps because they're up close and personal. You're concentrating on that big dot, put that on the target, you should be good to go, reasonably speaking. But for me, I still want something that I can really line up, post, and then between your two rear sights, and a little bit more traditional. And I think it's a little bit more accurate, especially at longer distances. I've heard a lot of people complain with big dots that the further out you go, the harder it is to shoot them. Now, again, I'm not speaking from experience. It's just that's feedback I've heard consistently over the years. So not so much for me, not at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've shot the big dots, the actual big dot, and not a fan of the big dot. Now, the standard dot version, I don't mind so much, but as far as like pinpoint accuracy, they're not that accurate for me. And I know they're designed for up close and personal, but if you do want to really reach out, 25 yards or something, I feel that they block too much of the bullseye, so to say. But I mean, they're not bad. But I tell you what, I'm really liking the F8s a lot. I put those on the CZP-10C, and I'm really actually enjoying those sights. And it's kind of like a hybrid between the HDs, the Trichicon HDs, and maybe like a big dot. And they're very bright. I think these will sell. And if it is a big dot, like what we've talked about before, the thing I had the problem was with the big white golf ball. I mean, it was just huge. So if they make the standard version, version of these, I haven't seen them yet, but if it has the small orange, I don't think that would be too bad.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, I've had big dots on the PPQ. I think I had one on my PPS. I had the F8 sights. I have, the big dot on the Steyr. I have no problem shooting with these at all. I actually like them. I like the fact that you just have that one big ass dot in the front. You point it, shoot it, and that's exactly where you're hitting. Now, obviously, if you're going out 50 yards, first off, why are you shooting anybody 50 yards away with a pistol? That would be my first question. Second question is, if you're shooting them 50 yards away, it's probably not self-defense, so you're going to jail. So for me, it doesn't, I don't really care about having precision accuracy because I'm not shooting somebody 50 yards away from me. I'm just not doing that. I don't plan on shooting anybody. So I think it's set up for a specific reason. And I think that reason works for the reason why I would carry, but that's me. And again, everybody's going to be different. It doesn't mean that these are the best sights, doesn't mean they're the worst. And it doesn't mean any of the others won't do. I mean, I know that Fit and Fire mentioned the iDot Pros. I absolutely love the iDot Pros. I think they're probably on my top 3 sights that I've ever had on any handgun because they're very efficient and they're effective. The dot is just the right size. If they do come with the standard size dot, I would probably go with those just to try them out because I've never had them. I've only had the big dot, and I'd be curious to see how those are. But either way, for me, I'm super excited because I'd rather have a green golf ball instead of or an orange golf ball than the white golf ball because as you're getting older, your eyes start to change, and if it pops out a little bit more, then that's great. That really is. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what those look like on a gun and how it handles itself. So I thought for me that was exciting because I do like them. I am a fan.
And one thing that I also really enjoy is the fiber optics. Where you've got the pinpoint, because you can make, or put it this way, I'm not saying everyone can, but I can make very accurate shots with a smaller fiber optic and even like a wider rear or a smaller front with a little bit wider rear. It's a lot more accurate for me personally. So because you look at it this way, and the only reason I always push night sights, and I've said this in videos before too, night sights, they're not going to light up the bad guy. You still need a white light on them. You need to light them up with a flashlight and know what you're shooting. However, if you ever get in a hand-to-hand scuffle, and you drop your gun, drop your firearm, night sights can help you find the gun super quick because they're going to glow. But I tell you what, if I have to, even in a white light or whatever, I think we could all probably point, at a normal distance. I think we could pretty much point it out at someone and light them up. But I tell you what, it's one thing to try this because it really works. Have a white light and then put your fiber optic out there, and it actually lights up your fiber optic. The white light, just the splash from it will light up your fiber optic, and it actually helps. And I've experienced that too, just kind of testing sights. But if I've got to do a pinpoint shot in a mall or, a big area, I want a fiber optic or a smaller front blade.
It's funny. Razor was saying that a lot of departments and military groups of one sort or another, I imagine he's saying, are going with fiber optics over night sights. And that to me is shocking. I'd be curious. And I believe it, but I would be curious to know what the rationale is, because I guess I've always thought that, even though fiber optics are fine, and I have that on some of my CZs, like the Shadow 2, that sort of thing, because it's a target gun, and those to me are target sights. Fiber optic, they are fantastic when there's ambient light, but if you're in a situation and police and groups like that are working oftentimes in the dead of night, they don't have the advantage of ambient light oftentimes, so they lose that front sight completely, and presumably the rears as well, unless they have tritium in the rears. And so to me, I don't see how that would be an advantage, except for accuracy when there's ambient light. So that's fascinating. I would be curious to know even more about that.
Right. And it's interesting that he brought that up too, because, I know you said that there's not a lot of ambient light, and working kind of in that world a little bit myself, I would tell you that in most cases, there's a lot more ambient light than you think, because on scene, you have multiple people that are shining multiple lights. So that ambient light is definitely there. But, now that you're seeing more manufacturers making gun lights that attach to the gun, that might not necessarily be the case, unless, of course, you have somebody who's kind of shadowing you as you go into the residence. Then you do have actually multiple areas of light. So that potentially could be why. Again, it's just a guess. I'm not saying that's why they're doing it, but it would make sense to me in regards to that. Although you can always get CZ factory night sights on a PO7 and PO9, and it lights up the entire state you're in.
Yeah, right.
brightest damn light sights known to
Yeah,
man.
I'll show you right here. This one's loaded, but these things right here, these night sights, those things light up the whole damn room in this hotel.
Yep. These are ridiculous. I mean, they're just the most bright night sights I've ever seen in my life, bar none. They just absolutely do it. And Young Guns is correct. They light up an entire airport runway.
Yeah, and I've read, going back to the fiber optics, I've read, tons of special force guys, they still prefer fiber optics, even in the field over, the way they're building fiber optics, the old way, it was this wide, the fiber would break or bend, they're sealing them off a lot better now. I mean, I've drawn mine from a holster tons and tons of times and I haven't broken them like I did my old ones where I had, all that room. So, but yeah, I was gonna say Razor's talking about the fibers are ruling the day. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy them.
Yeah, and then Keith right now is saying that TFX sites give you the best of both worlds, and he's got a good point with that too. It would be interesting to see them kind of evolve also as they go on. Like for example, is TFX Pros, that orange little circle, you can't even see it. I hate them for that reason. And it would be nice to see if you could change up the fiber optic a little bit color wise, maybe get a red and a green or something like that. If they could do it, I don't even know if they could do that, but I think that would be a way for them to evolve a little bit more. Not that they're listening, but it's just something that maybe consumers could demand a little bit,
And one thing, and I've done this test because I've got the TFX Pros on my Shield 45 and my Shield 9, and I kept them on there. But when I did put them on there, it actually did, just by changing those sights, and they kind of have the same height. It actually changed the point of impact quite a bit, more so than I thought it would. And I've actually seen other people talk about that too. It's like where you might just change another sight and they have the height right or something. It actually changed it quite a bit. Not that they're bad sights, but yeah, and you can't see the orange ring at all. So it's useless.
All right, so that was my little splurge on the old night sights. Some exciting, information from XS, and of course, I mean it's a good thing because now we're starting to see the market kind of shift. We're seeing more manufacturers going to those high def front sights, and I just think that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome.
Now, real quick, and we kind of talked about them a little bit off the air, but the night fusion sights too. I do see that they are making those for the PO7 and the PO9. So they're coming into the CZ world, which is good. So that's another offering. I know that you have experience with them 17. I personally don't.
Yeah.
What do you think about them?
The night, what is night fission, right?
Night fusion or
I always screw up the name. I can't remember it's fusion or fission. I did a video on it a while ago, and the construction portion of the night sights are excellent. The way they're constructed. I'm just not how can I say this again nicely? I just don't know if I buy into their marketing as much as they want you to. First off, if you look at the colors they show you, the orange and the green, the orange that I got on the front side of mine is not that bright. I actually even said that in the video, which was a little bit of a disappointment. I thought it would be much, much more high vis, but it's not. And then they tout it as it's, I think, 100 times brighter than any night sight. And I don't buy that either. I mean, I know that it's a clearer, kind of like a bluish color, I guess you could say that. So it is fairly bright. But the only problem that I've had is on that front dot, the window of the tritium vial is small. So it doesn't really show up. And it's bright, but it doesn't do what I think it could have done. And then the two rear windows on the rear sight are actually wider, or I should say bigger. So they're actually brighter than the front. And I don't know if it's just my set. I got them when they first came out on the market. But I'm not necessarily, I would not say that would be my go-to side. I mean, I only have them on one handgun, and I've actually thought about replacing them, because it didn't really do what I thought it was going to do, but that's just me.
Yeah. I hear you. Hey, there are a couple of questions that are out.
Sure, go for it.
Can we hit one?
Yeah.
So there were actually a couple, but I'll hit Frank's question here real quick. He said, any pistol or pistols with such great triggers, you wouldn't change it to an aftermarket one? I think that's actually kind of a good question because we spend a fair amount of time with Apex and various things like that. So any that you would not change out and have no desire to?
Well, for me, personally, I wouldn't change a factory PO7 or PO9. I wouldn't do anything to the TSO. I wouldn't do anything to. I don't see a reason to do anything to the P10. I know the HB industry trigger does make it better, or so I've heard, and I've played with them. Um, I just, I think those are good. The PPQ, and we've talked about this before. The PPQ is a great trigger. However, when you do put the apex in it, and I think we've all experienced it, it actually takes up, some of the reset, takes up some of the play. And you don't know. A lot of people don't notice that in the PPQ, but once you have the apex in the PPQ, it's a big difference. It really is. But those are, I'm not saying you have to change it to PPQ. I think it's a great trigger, but for me, there's plenty that yes, I definitely need to, like some of the Smiths or Smith and Wessons and the Glocks.
Yeah, I mean, I along the same lines. I mean, the P10 trigger is a fantastic trigger out of the box. You don't necessarily have to do anything to it. Obviously, it's about preference and choice. The PPQ for me was number one of any handgun I ever owned. The P99 was very good as well, especially in the single action. But I would say definitely the PPQ is probably one you would not have to change out. It's not, you don't have to do it. But as Big Johnson said, if you do put that apex trigger in, it even gets that much better just because of the controllable reset. But I would say P10 and definitely the PPQ have two of the best triggers right out of the box.
For me, strikers, almost always, I have no shame in changing triggers out on most striker fired guns, just to even see what the differences are between the stock and something different. I would agree, PPQ and P10 have very good triggers out of the box, and I would be satisfied with those without changing them out. But anytime there's a margin for improvement, I'm gonna try for that. And it's just, again, it's fun to try some different things. But as far as guns that I would not change, like the Shadow 2, or the SPO1 Shadow Orange, things like that. I mean, some of those guns that just, to me, the triggers are already aftermarket in the box or out of the box or whatever. You don't need to change those. Certainly some 1911s that I've had over time, I would never dream of changing because I just didn't feel it needed it. You can always do some tweaking with it, but for me, I wouldn't. So to answer that question, I mean, there are definitely some triggers that I would not consider aftermarket. Wouldn't have a need. Even the TSO, even though yes, I do have a different trigger on it, it really, all it is aluminum versus polymer. There really isn't much of a difference otherwise for that. I mean, that trigger was fantastic. So definitely some that I would not consider changing.
Yeah, and real quick, there's, and I will second that on 1911s. Now, there's some lower grade 1911s that, yes, need to be polished and need to have some stuff, but your mid to higher ranges, yeah, those trigger 1911s are fine. But, one thing, and I can't believe 17 didn't bring this up, or he did, I guess, in the chat, the Steyr. If anything on the Steyr, I would love to feel more of an audible reset, so to say. But I think that is a fantastic trigger out of the box. I mean, the Steyr, and I know a lot of people haven't felt it or played with it because it's not in a lot of stores, but I really do think that is a super nice trigger out of the box.
So in regards to the Steyr, it definitely does have a fantastic trigger. The reason why I didn't put that in there was basically because of the non-existent reset on the trigger. I mean, it's not there. And I was watching a video not too long ago by somebody who was doing a video on the M9, and they were telling the viewers about how amazing the reset was. And I was like, I don't know what the hell gun he's got, because there really is no reset on it. I mean, there is, but first of all, the audible reset is, to me, pointless, because if you're shooting your gun with no hearing protection, you're going to be deaf anyway, so you're not going to be hearing a click. But there's not even a tactile reset on this gun, and it's barely noticeable. But again, the trigger reset is exactly in the same position from where you started from. I will tell you, there is a particular company right now that is maybe working on something. Again, I can't really disclose that because they haven't told me I could. But I'm really anxious to see if this is something they're going to be doing. You guys know I love the Steyr. Love it.
Yeah. Good guns.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some fantastic, 1911 triggers, and there's some great, competition triggers. I mean, we've all played around with them, but I just say, and like I've said before, 31 flavors, do what works for you, because I've been beat up many times about changing triggers, because hell, I have some pretty light triggers, like on my shield, it's like 3 pounds, 2 ounces, stuff like that. And people are like, oh, that's going to get you killed. I'm like, if you don't put your finger on the bang switch, I mean, I just say do what you feel comfortable with, period.
Right.
You don't want to mess with it, don't mess with it. But don't judge others for what they do.
Yeah, and just the last note on the Steyrs. I mean, the trigger is like it's very very smooth. I mean, it's hard to beat. I mean, out of the box, I think this one was a little bit over 4.5 pounds when I got it, and that's with nothing, no polish job, nothing, and then it's just gotten nice and smooth ever since then. So.
Oh, and I will. C Kim is actually bringing up a great point. The FN57, it definitely needs a better trigger. If y'all have ever played with a 5.7 or shot one, I'm not fond of the factory trigger, but there's no other options for it. I saw a guy that took one and tried to polish it a little bit, and I think he got like less than half a pound. But all he did was, it was a newer one, so he just basically kind of pre-broke it in. But yeah, it's not a good trigger.
All right. So speaking of some guns here, and we talked about a lot of plastic. So I'm now going to bring up the one gun that for me has never screamed by me, and that's 1911s. Just really quick. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, and I know you two guys are kind of 1911 connoisseurs, so to speak. You know, if somebody was going to be buying a handgun, and they had two choices, let's say whatever gun, like a typical striker fired handgun, could be a Glock, could be a CZ, whatever, or a 1911, would you tell them to try to do the 1911 first or the striker fired first? Why or why not?
You can take this one, KS, if you'd like.
That's really tough. You complicated it with the last part of that, and I like that. It's intriguing. I would say try the 1911 first, and that might be a little bit of a bias because I think a lot of people, not everybody, 1911 doesn't have the cool factor it used to have versus some of the newer modern guns. But I don't think that's true necessarily. But I would say do the 1911 first. Because a lot of times the grip usually feels good. It's a pretty natural point of aim for most people, right? The triggers, generally speaking, are at least good out of the box. But if you get a 1911 that's been tuned or it's a little higher up on the echelon, it's probably going to be a very good trigger. It's heavier, it's easier to control, especially if it's in a 9mm. But even a 45, it's easy to control. So have them do that first, and then have them shoot, whether it be a Glock or a Smith or a PPQ or whatever, and see what the differences is. I don't know what the result would be. I mean, I think obviously everybody reacts differently to guns because your hands are built differently. Everything is different with every single person. So you're going to get some very different reactions. But I would imagine a lot of people or possibly would say, wow, that 1911 actually is really pretty cool to shoot. Now, I could be totally wrong on that, but that would be a very interesting study.
Okay, now 17, you actually said for a new gun owner, right?
That would be for any. I know that somebody asked about what use. It's really your first gun. It's going to be your only gun for a while.
Right. If it's your first gun, I personally would not recommend a 1911. Okay, and the reason being for me is, or suggesting it to someone, or if they ask me, because a lot of people are not going to be used to the grip safety, that most 1911s have. They're also, if they are keeping it on a nightstand, a lot of people will not be used to the cocked and locked. Okay, they will not be used to flipping a safety off and on. A striker fire is just going to, you pull the trigger as long as it's racked and ready to go. You pull the trigger, you get a constant trigger every time. You don't have any extra switches or bells and whistles to mess with. Especially in a panic situation, you amplify that up. Safeties aren't going to be turned off. People aren't going to hit the grip safety right. And like just say a smaller hand or a much larger hand on a lot of 1911s and even 2011s, my hands are so big that I have issues sometimes. If it's not an extended grip safety, like a big bump out of the back, an extended bump, I can't actuate them sometimes because my hands wrap around it. So, and a person with smaller hands sometimes cannot actuate that either. So I would say right off the bat, go with the striker fire. It's a constant trigger. It's gonna do the same thing every single time, and you don't have anything to worry about. That's just my opinion. Or if you want all of those things, then maybe go with an XD where you're getting the grip safety, you're getting, the 5 safeties on a gun. I think that's overkill and I don't like them, but that would be my opinion.
All right. And they're great opinions, I still don't know how I feel about a 1911. I did have a really good experience with the EMP. Obviously that was a step above what I shot prior to that in the 1911 series. But I still am not sure if a 1911 fits my needs per se. The one thing I couldn't really get adjusted to was my support hand, where to put my damn thumb. Because I like to ride very high on the slide, and it just felt like it just couldn't get that thumb high enough on a 1911 without it, tearing into my hand when the slide, reciprocated back. So I'm not sure yet. I mean, it was a really awesome day of shooting, and it really was a great gun, but I'm still not sure about the 1911 thing. I know there's an aura behind it, and probably due to the fact that it's, a 1911. But I still have yet to be captured by it. I still am just not. I don't see it, in regards to why I would need one, I guess. But maybe one day. But
now, and you didn't include this in our selections. You gave us a striker fire or a 1911, but I agree with a lot of people in the chat, and that's what I would have said. I would recommend a double action, single action first, because it's going to give you a first heavier trigger pull, unless you're keeping it cocked and locked.
Right. I just threw the 1911 out there just because myself personally, I'm not a 1911 guy. So I wanted to see what was really, noticing that a lot of people were saying 1911. So there definitely is still that pull to a 1911 series, that platform. People still love it. And, it's interesting, because I still have not felt that, connection, I guess, to that. If you get connected to guns, I don't even know if you do.
I think you do. I think you absolutely do.
Yeah, and I grew up on them. That's one reason why I really, really enjoy them. But once you find capacity, you really get into the capacity game. Some of the 1911s fall out of that, unless, you're able to get a double stack or, something, a 2011 or something to that effect. But a lot of people aren't going to carry potentially that large of a gun. So, that's why I think other guns fill that role. But man, I really love a 1911, but you could, and there's, we've talked about this before. There's all kinds of gamuts on the pricing, from low end to high end. But I think if you're going to get a 1911, don't get the cheap one. Get the medium to the, you can get a Ruger, a nice Ruger, something like that, but just don't get super, super low budget for your first one. Because if you have issues, that could tarnish your 1911, so to say, experience.
Right. And CW did bring up a point. I would agree. The best first gun is a CZP-01. He is absolutely right on that end.
No bias there whatsoever.
None whatsoever at all. This part of the program is sponsored by CZ.
Right. Yeah. Well, different strokes for different folks, for sure. And it's fun that we can sit here and talk about all these different options. And I do think that you gravitate towards certain guns and certain feels. I mean, I think that, and that's part of the mystique of it all. Now, as far as, a lot of people have said, and Big Johnson, I think you guys have echoed that 1911s especially are a little bit more complicated because there's an extra step in there with the safety, not to mention lower round capacity, generally speaking, a little bit heavier, that sort of thing. And I would agree with that. A 1911 would never be on the radar for me as far as a carry gun. But it was the first gun I ever shot, and the only exposure I had to guns for probably 10 years, the first 10 years of shooting of my life, just 1911s. And so for me, those actions became very natural. And I think, especially for a first-time gun owner, if that is what you have and that's what you get used to, it just becomes second nature, just like anything else. And that would be the same with strikers or double action, single actions with a decocker or something like that. And so, you practice and you train with what you have, and hopefully you get proficient at it, whatever it is. And but you become one with the gun,
Now, and since you guys are on here and we're talking, we're kind of going into a little 1911s, and I know other people are going to chime in on this too, but for your first 1911, would you recommend, or would you prefer a 45 or a 9mm?
9mm.
Okay.
9mm, hands down.
Okay. And see, I'm completely the opposite. I like 9mm 45, or excuse me, 1911s, but I really like a 45. I'm a traditionalist, I am. I think the 1911 9mm is great, but I think for your first one, unless you're recoil sensitive or the push, I just love a 45 1911. It's just me personally.
So apparently we have a side conversation going on between Radiation King and I guess everybody here. He's talking about the gun laws being too easy to get guns in the United States. Looks like, I see that he was timed out.
He was timed out.
So I just want to, I'm going to educate really quick, if you guys don't mind, super fast. So, and anybody who says that there are, 15 billion gun, shootings in schools, just so you know, if you're going to use that statistic, you need to know how that statistic was created. Anytime a gun is discharged at all in a school zone or near a school zone, they count that as a school shooting. So that is one of the most inaccurately ever created percentages, ratios, statistics, whatever you want to call it. So that is not a true statistic. And if you do know anything about statistics, you're going to realize very quickly that you can manipulate statistics to show whatever you want to show. So, if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're getting accurate information, because I will call you out on it every time. So that is not true.
And you also forgot, not school related, but just shootings in general. It's suicides. I mean, there's all kinds of other things.
And to sit there and say that it's too easy to get guns. First off, if you want to talk about why it's so easy for crazy people to get guns, you have to go back to the Democrats passing a legislation called HIPAA. The HIPAA Act requires people now to keep medical information secret and sealed so that you cannot share that information. That means law enforcement cannot get it. That means schools cannot get it for kids who may be suffering from mental issues, so on and so forth. So again, we love having people on our chat, and we love when people comment, but you got to make accurate comments. And unfortunately, those are not accurate comments. So that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah.
All right. That was fun.
Preach, brother, preach.
Listen, I'm very passionate, because it is not easy to get handguns in the state of New York. It is much easier for criminals to get them than it is for law-abiding citizens. And when people say that, it makes my blood boil, because it is not true. And this is as Fox News would say, even though I don't really like them either, this is a non-spin zone. So just make sure you realize that, guys.
Yeah. No fake news here.
No fake news. It's all real stuff.
You guys see Shaq? Okay, I'm here now. Sorry, I'm late. You guys can go ahead and start.
Yeah. Sorry, we're just about done.
Yeah. So yeah, we are getting to that time.
Yeah. So what do you guys got going on, man? Let's finish this up, and we'll call it a night.
Go ahead, KS.
A pile of stuff. And like I said at the very beginning, I'm not quite sure where to start. So I'm not sure exactly what's coming out this weekend. I don't know if it's going to be the Shield Easy, because I've had that for a while now, and all the shooting's done and everything's kind of done with it. I just need to put it all together. I have a new acquisition to the channel. I'm not going to show it just yet, but it was a conglomeration of a company that helped out with this, and so that'll be very exciting. And it's first foray into anything like this, and a lot of lessons.
It's a strike B.
I wish, but that's on the radar. I'm not going to lie.
Don't do it.
The Archon, but then a couple of product things coming up as well. And then I don't know. So if I could only have one, I'm kind of curious about the 45 versus the 19X, because I've been thinking about that the last week. So I might have to present that to the public. So I don't know. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of gear and stuff laying on, and I've got some guns that I need to review. So I've got some stuff, and also, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all don't follow us on Instagram, please do, because we dump stuff out there, sneak peek stuff that we don't even do videos on, or that stuff coming up. So check us out there, and also, enjoy the our friends and family over in the chat room. We definitely enjoy them. They kind of bring. They're what make this possible. So please subscribe to each other and check out the other channels and the content creators. And we appreciate y'all so much. Enjoy doing this every Wednesday. Now, next Wednesday, whose chat is it? It's KS's, right?
I believe it's KS next week.
That's mine. Did Pop say that he's got something coming up right after this? I don't know, but if he does, be sure to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. But as always, we appreciate y'all so much.
Yeah. And on closing note, really quick, guys, thanks for everybody joining us tonight. I think we almost peaked tonight, fellas. I think we were almost at 90, which for us, I think is pretty good. I think we were at 81 at one point. Okay, and that seems to be our average, which is always great. It's always appreciated. It's always enjoyable to have at least one night a week, especially on hump day, when we all know this is the worst day of the week, except for Monday. Everybody kind of comes out, they join in and they talk. And yeah, sometimes, we get a little testy with each other, but that's why we love one another in a nice way, plutonic way. But I think overall, it's an enjoyable evening for chatting about things related to the community of guns and people who love them. For me, I don't really have. I got a couple of guns coming. I'm just waiting because it's so easy to get them in New York that I just get them within 6 to 8 months after actually paying for them. So I hope you guys have a great night. Everyone stay safe. Thanks for joining us. And as always, everyone, freedom is never free. And you two clowns, I'll see you next week.
Have a good one, everyone.
Later.
See ya.
Thanks.